This was not something that you could buy, get ammunition, and go out there and shoot 38 people. There's no way that any militiaman at the time this thing was written could have shot 38 people. They would have been happy if they'd done it in the course of the war. So our culture has changed. Our culture, I won't say it tolerates gun violence, but it more than tolerates it. It glorifies it almost. I mean, these are, and this guy's glorified. Look at how much coverage he got. He got a lot more coverage than he would ever have gotten if he pursued a normal, whatever that might have been for him, a normal career. Well, so I don't stand either way on the issue of more or less gun control, but I do say this is particularly an American problem. And wherever we go as a nation, look at when I first saw that news the other day, I thought they were reporting on something in Baghdad. 38 people die in a school. I said, "Oh my God, it's terrible what these militia people are doing over there, or whatever." It turns out it was something right here.
Obviously, they don't have gun control in Iraq.
Well, maybe they do. Maybe they've got very tight guns. Maybe you have to belong to a militia to own a gun, but that didn't solve any problem for Iraq, did it?
But something you mentioned earlier that I have some numbers here on, and I presume that they are reliable, and it has to do with legislation controlling firearms.
Right.
This says the National Center for Policy Analysis, a conservative think tank, reported the following statistics. New Jersey adopted what sponsors described as the most stringent gun law in the nation in 1966. 2 years later, the murder rate was up 46%, and the reported robbery rate had nearly doubled. In 1968, Hawaii imposed a series of increasingly harsh measures, and its murder rate, then a low 2.5 per 100,000 per year, tripled to 7.2 by 1977. In 1976, Washington, D.C. enacted one of the most restrictive gun control laws in the nation. Since then, the city's murder rate has risen 134%, while the national murder rate has dropped 2%.
See, these statistics are meaningless because they don't tell you how much the murder rate would have gone up if they hadn't passed the law. Maybe they'd gone up 3 times as much.
You're right, but if their studies had come out the other way and said that it had,
they wouldn't be coming out.
Then it would be equally open to what would it have been otherwise.
Exactly.
But they must have some significance. Let me give you the rest of it, and then we'll move on beyond passing laws. Evanston, Illinois, a Chicago suburb of 75,000 residents, became the largest town to ban handgun ownership in September 1982, but experienced no decline in violent crime. Among the 15 states with the highest homicide rates, 10 have restrictive or very restrictive gun laws. 20% of the U.S. homicides occur in 4 cities with just 6% of the population: New York, Chicago, Detroit, and Washington, D.C. Each has a virtual prohibition on private handguns. So, as flawed as the studies might be, there appears to be some validity to their position that enacting restrictive laws doesn't reduce murder rates. Now, what do you even though the statistics are questionable, but
no, I think
what about that?
The figures may be accurate, but the analysis may be inaccurate. If we pass more stringent gun control laws and it goes up or down, then you assume that there's some relationship between these facts. But that's not necessarily the case because you haven't studied how much sugar was in the diet of these people, or you haven't studied what the economic. There are a lot of other factors by shootings and murders.
You're
the
right.
Crime rate in New York City has gone down since Giuliani came in.
Yes.
He likes to take credit for that. It may have had nothing to do with.
It may not have.
Who knows?
But it's in his platform for president.
He takes credit, of course.
All right. Well, let's talk about something else, and that is that many people who own handguns, particularly, have them for defensive purposes, not offensive purposes. Now, here's something else. Some more statistics I got. says there are approximately 2 million defensive gun uses, not defensive guns, per year. Defensive gun uses per year by law-abiding citizens.
2 million.
2 million. That was the findings of a national survey conducted by this man who was a Florida State University criminologist in 1993. And it says prior to his survey, 13 other surveys indicated a range of between 800,000 to 2.5 million defensive gun uses annually. It says, however, these surveys each had their flaws, which prompted this man to conduct his own study specifically tailored to estimate the number of defensive gun uses annually. Now, is that for those who would like to limit the availability of guns? What about the defensive use? Is there some validity for having a gun in case you need it?
I certainly think some people feel that way, and I would not want to take that away from them if they felt that was their priority. I think some people can be trusted with guns in a defensive sense. I come from a family of gun owners, and some of them would probably use a gun had an intruder come in the house, armed and loaded, ready to take out a family member or something. But again, I think that comes back to this idea that we live in a culture, like Lanny said, driven by violence. We live in a culture of fear. We're worried about dying all the time, you know.
All right. Well,
and as an evangelical myself, I hope that the fear of death doesn't bother me too much. That's why I personally would not choose to own.
Well, could you shoot somebody? Even somebody breaking in your home. I mean, you think you could pull out a gun and actually?
I don't think I would have the confidence to do it.
You know, I mean, how do you know that guy's going to shoot you and whatever? You know, a guy, I'm assuming it's a guy.
Well,
would you shoot somebody?
But if someone was pointing a gun at me,
no.
absolutely.
Somebody pointing a gun at you, it's too late to shoot him.
Well,
unless they're a really bad shot.
Sometimes they say, give me your
money or
your life. You know the Jack Benny joke.
I know
give me your money or your life, and he says, I'm thinking. Well, I wouldn't stop to think if it was if they were pointing a gun at me and threatening. If I could do it,
I probably would do it, but I
would
sure would have trouble with it afterwards.
Now there are those people whom I have seen on TV after the trouble, in Virginia, who have said if anyone in one of those classrooms had a gun, that shooter would not have been able to kill that many people because he would have been shot himself. Is there some validity to that? How about it, Ned?
I would think so. I mean, certainly I think the university was negligent in denying the students the right to carry guns on campus. They sort of set them up. And also on a side note, I think if marijuana had been available to Mr. Cho, he might have
could have been stoned at home.
Relaxed a little bit. So
now you're getting into another subject.
I think overregulation did set up that situation. I think the constraints of our society.
In other words, you were speaking more or less as a libertarian that says government should stay out of our private personal matters. Am I expressing that correctly?
Mm-hmm.